Good morning, fellow hat nerds. Welcome to the 11th installment of uh, Hat Chat here. Wow, number 11. I'm now firmly in double digits. 11 is a kind of a lucky number for me. And the nice thing is that we also have the chat working today. Thank goodness. I had my phone prepared just in case we were going to run into an issue. For those folks that kind of follow my Mets content, I had the worst technical issues ever yet last night. Didn't matter anyway. Also, the fact that my team lost. So, boo hoo. We got a viewer here. Welcome, viewer. I'm going to stop telling my viewers to post comments because I realize that some of them may be not wanting to communicate with me, and I'm okay with that. I'm just here to see a hat, and hear some stuff, not to interact with Luke. And that's fine. But you're more than welcome to post a comment, ask a question. Just to kind of recap yesterday. Yesterday, we probably had the shortest show that I've done, but I think it's one of my better ones, What I'm hoping as this goes along is that I don't have to kind of sit here for 2 hours. Again, I have no idea. Maybe everybody wants to see 2 hour show. I feel like we are living in in the era of short attention spans, right? Everybody's kind of like used to short form content. So that's why there's YouTube shorts. That's why TikTok is so popular. Ain't nobody got time for that, right? It's basically the kind of model is because we're being bombarded with so many sources like, hey, look at this, look at me, look at this, look at all that. And I don't want to get caught up in the white noise. At the same time, I do need a little bit of time to kind of geek out over the stuff that I love to geek out about. And basically, I don't know if this will land an hour. I'm comfortable with doing a solid half hour. Again, I will, as this channel grows, hopefully it does grow. Maybe it will never grow. That's fine. But what I'm hoping is as people kind of consume the content and kind of essentially take some ownership over, hey, I'm a loyal viewer. I'd like to see XYZ. And it doesn't mean I'm going to be able to deliver that, right? Some people don't want to see anything but a new hat. Like, don't show me anything unless you got a new one. I'm like, that's not going to be me. I mean, I do add to my hat collection, but I already have a pretty, like for me, a sizable hat collection. I can't add hats every single day because a viewer wants to see a new hat and they're tired of seeing all my old hats. I think for now, the show, I got plenty of hats to show for a decent number of shows. Again, if you've been following any of my content, I always talk about the fact that I have more than one hat, less than 100, and that's well less than 100. I think I have less than 50. It's probably in the 30s somewhere, to be honest. If I'm going to reveal that at this moment, it's around the 30s. Only because I've added some hats, but I've sold some hats. And it's going to be a living, my collection is living just as much as I am, right? Like we don't say, and I talked about this in a different show, we don't stay stagnant. So why should our collection be stagnant, right? Again, it's just the type of collector that I am, that pieces will cycle into my possession and cycle out. And that's okay. Some people, there's just a one-way thing where they only acquire hats. They never get rid of any hats, right? People with watches are the very same way. Sometimes with cars, although I don't know how that, like Jay Leno, I'm like, God bless him. He's, got millions and millions of dollars and he can afford to have the museum that he has. But I know that there are folks that have really ridiculous car collections, but don't have that kind of money and also don't have that kind of space. So I can only imagine that they probably either have a huge garage or a warehouse that they rent or own, or a combination of the fact that they don't live in any place with an HOA, that they have all their cars parked on the street. And I'm like, I don't know. Regardless of whether or not you have the HOA barking down your back, I gotta just think that that's a big under. You really gotta love cars, and I know people out there really love cars. But that's such a big possession. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger has like a tank. Arnold Schwarzenegger owns a tank, and I think he owns several tanks. I'm like, wow. It's one thing to own like a muscle car, but a tank. I mean, you really gotta want to have that, you know. So that's whenever I kind of feel down about how much space my hats take up, at least I kind of like, okay, at least I don't own a tank. Nor do I want to. So anyhow, thanks for rocking with me this morning. And again, I'm. It seems like right now the show has been starting more or less around 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep doing that. It just happens to be convenient for me, and I'm hoping that also works out for my West Coasters who are 3 hours ahead. International, I don't know. I don't know. And again, I'm not opposed to doing more than one show if somebody really like if we get a real contingent. But right now, 11 a.m. Eastern, only because again, usually the process is I get up in the morning. I'm a wreck, just like a lot of folks. I mean, if you get up in the morning and you look pristine, God bless. I wish I was that. I'm not a finished. I'm nowhere close. I'm not even a finished product now. But at least now at 11 a.m. Eastern, I have gotten a walk-in. So today was a beautiful day. I was managed to get a walk-in. I had my hat on, and I don't know. I got some energy. I got my coffee in. Like I moved in. Like if you've watched any of the shows, I moved into the fizzy drink phase of the day. So like I've been trying to like not make a new pot of coffee. Again, starting new habits. My walk, limiting my caffeine intake. I switched to half calf not too long ago, only because again, I'm just trying to make little baby steps to try to live a better lifestyle. And again, these fizzy drinks, even though like again, I get these from Aldi, they're 0 calorie, but it doesn't mean they're completely healthy for you, right? So I think regular water is probably healthier. This has what's called natural flavors. If you do any kind of research, natural flavors are not something that you want to be consuming. But again, these are kind of just little steps, baby steps in the right direction. At least it's not like your regular Pepsi. At least what I'm telling myself to feel okay, that it's not regular Pepsi. And, I'm just going to stick to that, until my brain tells me, hey, do something else. And I commit, it'll be these these fizzy drinks, the sparkling water from Aldi, which, again, it doesn't taste like syrupy, but it doesn't taste as bland as, let's say, a glass of water. So I'm happy with these right now, and then we'll see. You might see an evolution. Anyhow, we got 2 folks on the stream. Welcome again. I'm going to try to move away from requesting comments, only because it just dawned on me that some people they feel uncomfortable trying to interact with anybody, let alone some kind of talking head on the screen. So I don't want to kind of keep harping that. I don't want this to be a place where like I see you watching me on there and I'm like, come on, comment, you know what I mean? But I welcome it. Again, feel free. But before I get into any particulars, I'm just going to go over the hat of the day. Maybe you saw this stream on the Fedora Lounge. So shout out to my Fedora Lounge, my Fedora Loungers, my Fedora Lounge lizards. Again, I don't know if there's a formal way to refer to ourselves, but welcome. I also post as Good Loops. I used to be Crown Royal on the Fedora Lounge. And you might also have found me on some of the Facebook groups. Again, I just wanted to get this out to all the venues that I go to get my hat nerd on, just to see. It's like, hey, maybe I'll go directly to my tribe, and they may want to join me for a conversation. But anyway, back to the hat of the day. Again, I go off tangents. The hat of the day is this, and again, I'm probably butchering this. This is my Carson. I'm trying to do this and get close without like causing a catastrophe. This is my Carson Pirie. Again, if you guys know better how to pronounce it, the Carson Pirie Scott Co. Fedora. This is one of those, like, it's very plain looking, But again, we talked about the idea of the knockaround hat. You know, when I go over and I talk about the knockaround hat, it doesn't mean that I go and knock it around and try to destroy it in a part of my hair. Again, part of the thing in my morning prep does not include brushing my hair. The nice thing about wearing hats is that we're able to cover that. So if you're like, wow, Luke, I could probably also use a shave. But yeah, the Carson Pirie and Scott and Co. was a department store in the greater Chicago area. So I'm going to show a little bit of the hat line. I do have some photos to show as well. But this hat is, you know, held up pretty good. And I'll talk a little bit more about like the what I know about this hat and what kind of drew me. Again, this is one of those hats that I bought. You know, I talked about a lot of things that drew me to the hat. And I don't know, this might have been one of my early brown hats. I'm kind of trying to recreate, you know, right? And like what was that magic that happened with this hat? I don't even think it was anything really magical. I was like, okay, I need a brown hat. That's one that looks like it might fit. Let's order it. I think the magic really didn't come in for me, the allure of this hat, until I actually got it in my hands. I felt it and I put it on. When I put it on, I was like, holy cow, this hat, like, again, I don't have any custom made hats, right? That's not something I've really gotten into at this stage in my hat journey. But this hat fit me like it was made for me. And the felt, even though like I wouldn't say this felt is of the highest quality, it really was a really malleable felt. And then you remember when I talked about the Borsalino velour that I own. I only own one Borsalino at the moment. But it's something that I hear repeated with my fellow hat nerds that are really into Borsalino, is that it just has one of those malleable felts, right? And when I say by malleable, it means that you're able to shape it and it will stay that shape. Again, I wouldn't quite put it up in the class of Borsalino, because I felt that and I'm like, that's really, really soft and like really plush. And this is not that plush, but at the same time, it is malleable. And like I said, I'm the type of hat collector and hat wearer that I don't like to steam my hats. One, I'm lazy. I don't think I've ever steamed a hat. If I did, I'd do it like with a tea kettle, you know, because I just feel like I'm not going to buy a specialized steamer. I'm just not one of those guys that enjoys doing that. But I do know that a lot of folks do enjoy that process. I actually seen it happen. I could see the allure. You know, it's kind of just, again, showing the hat some love, getting it to just the right shape. For me, dry bashing a hat, like, you know, I talk about like the karate chop that I'll start with. This one kind of came, I think, shaped. It might have come with this, I'm just going to call it a teardrop. I don't think it's quite a center bash. It's kind of like in between. I might have added these side dents, these front dents in there. Don't remember. All I remember is that I was able to like, dry bash it. And by dry bash, I mean I'm just doing it with my hand, no steam, no additional assistance. And then I put it on. It just feels right. And I've worn this hat so much. I kind of showed you that sweatband, and it still held up. But I do want to talk a little bit more, right? So sometimes this is one of those reciprocal things, right? What came first, the chicken or the egg? When a lot of the hats that I talk about, like talk about what grabbed me initially about the hat. And this hat, I can't really remember, like other than it being a brown hat. And I might have like at that point in my journey, maybe this is one of my earlier hats. I was like, I need a brown hat, you know? As you can see, it kind of like, I wore the shirt a couple days in a row. Sorry. I do that sometimes, kind of like my hat. Sometimes I grab a shirt and it works. And I'm like, just so I don't have to make a decision in the morning, I'll rewear the shirt. So, you know, hopefully that's okay. I don't have a big extensive wardrobe anyway. But this is like one of my, I want to say this is kind of like a bowler style shirt. So you guys usually see me wearing a guayabera, a Cuban guayabera. This is one of my non-guayaberas. It's kind of like a bowler style shirt. If you kind of notice the pattern, and it's kind of like a beige and off-white two-tone. I think it goes really well with the brown hat. and like the contrast with the black t-shirt. I always wear like usually a black undershirt. Anyhow, not to get into style points. I don't know. This technically is a style channel only because hats are a form of apparel, and kind of fits into that style. This is just happens to be the style that I'm comfortable with. It doesn't mean it's a great style. It's just my style, right? So anyway, back to the hat. Again, this is one of those hats that I grew to love, and I really love this hat after I came to me. So I ordered it. I believe I got it online. It didn't get in a personal sale. It was just something where I'm like, okay, that seems that'll do the trick. When I got it, just the totality. I just kind of like that Knox Tom and Jerry. It feels right, and it feels like it was made for me, even though it wasn't, right? And I'll talk a little bit more about like what I was able to find out about the hat, right? So this is one of those hats that didn't come with a big name brand, except for the department store itself, right? So I showed you the liner, showed you the plastic tip liner that was protecting. Remember, we talked about that with some of my hats that around, I want to say the 50s, when men started using a lot more product in their hair, hat manufacturers have developed that plastic tip liner to kind of protect the lining of the hat from that product, right? The nice thing is, regardless of whether or not you use product, is also really cool if you're a heavy sweater, which I am. So that plastic will allow that sweat not to kind of cut through and damage that lining. So it's still very functional regardless of whether you use any kind of product in your hair. Now one of the things where I have traditionally, I've done this successfully for a couple shows. I'm going to do it again. You know, knowing me, this will decide not to work now. I just had that kind of issue with technology. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen and share some photos that I have to see if I'm able to, share some of these photos here. Start off, and this will kind of be like tradition of sharing some of the, maybe it's a little bit more of a still photo. Again, you can see this was kind of like probably what I saw when I got the hat. It's a very unremarkable hat, right? Like it's just a brown hat. Like it's just a brown hat, right? And it is just a brown hat. It just happens to be a hat that I really love, and I feel like the shape is very complimentary. I think it's no secret why my hats come from a certain era, right? So if you guys are coming from the Fedora Lounge or some of the Facebook groups like Kevin's Hats and Guitars, some of you are really big fans, and I am a big fan, but it hasn't, like, my collection hasn't evolved to like the hats with the tall crowns. Morgan was here, my friend Morgan Brown, who's on the Kevin's Hats and Guitars Facebook group. She has a nostalgia, looks great on her. A lot of folks, Kevin, I think it's a really popular style that Kevin has from KTG Hats, with the really tall crown. It really is a throwback to the earlier days, the earlier decades, right? So like anything probably pre-1950s usually came with that really tall crown, especially domestic hats. Now, what we talked about, again, not to belabor this point, but we know that hat style evolved, especially after the 50s. And in my mind, it coincided with the rise of the automobile, right? So as hats started evolving to fit the times, that kind of coincided with the rise of the automobile. Those tall hat crowns, I gotta imagine, were really cumbersome for the folks that had to get in and out of an automobile, right? So we knew the Ford Model T came out really early, but it wasn't until like post-World War II that America prospered to such a point where now owning a vehicle became something that was accessible to the average household. And now you got a person that is wearing a hat and now has to contend with coming in and out of the hat, in and out of the car without hitting their head, the top of their hat on the roof of the car. But you also had a fact that essentially we were even moving away from the idea of even using the hat, right? Now that folks started driving cars a lot more often, the hat became more of like an extra accessory, more like a fashion thing instead of a functional thing. Maybe still functional for a lot of folks that had thinning hair and wanted to still like protect their scalp. But you started seeing that shift, and like right into the 60s when we had the Kennedy administration, you really had a shift because now even the president, our elected official of the highest office, some would say the highest office in the world, now wasn't a hat person. So you start, again, just some things to think about. But I just happen to be somebody that really enjoys that low crown. So this is kind of like an in between. I don't know what the crown height is on this. It definitely is not like what I would call low crown, but it's definitely not a high crown, right? I think high crowns start getting into that 5-inch and plus territory. And I want to say like a medium crown is somewhere. Hey, Morgan, I was just talking about you. All good. We were just talking about crown lengths, right? Your photo is one of the photos that Kevin uses on his website for I think it's the Nostalgia Premiere. You can correct me if I'm wrong, if I got that model wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's like the Nostalgia Premiere. Yeah, really great looking hat. I was talking about like what makes that hat the way it looks and why people love it so much is because of that high crown, right? So a lot of folks go vintage, and they go really vintage to kind of get that high crown and be able to kind of mold it to the way they want it to look. But we know that, well, one, now that we have KTG hats and we have Huff Bud, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I've only seen it spelled but not pronounced. But we got Huff Bud, we got KTG hats, and I'm sure there's others that I'm forgetting. But they have product like modern hats that you can get that really tall crown with. For me, I kind of, because of the way I dress, like my style is a lot more casual and a lot less. It's still a I think my style is still a throwback style, but it's throwback maybe to a later era. Maybe like the I want to say maybe 60s or 70s, maybe the 80s in New York City. You might have seen a lot of folks looking like me. Yes, I feel that people's number one stipulation when buying a hat. Yeah, crown height matters. Yeah, right. Or crown size matters, right? For a lot of folks, just to kind of sneak some, semi innuendo there. Yeah, crown height does matter for a lot of folk. For me, it matters, but in the opposite, right? So like for me, I talked Morgan that a lot of folks, it's the crown height has to be like 5 inches or more. It's kind of like if it's not that, then I don't want it. I think I'm in the minority. I don't know. Maybe I'm not in the minority, but I feel like based on my interactions with like folks, especially on the Fedora Lounge. On the Fedora Lounge, I find like the high crown hats get the most love. They're more universally loved. Maybe because of just the look. Maybe it could just be historical, right? So like if you want that high crown and you don't want to buy a modern hat, you're gonna have to go into like, I want to say 50s or earlier, right? And probably preferably 40s to get that I want to say that gangster, that look, right? Oh, no worries, Morgan. Again, you don't have to apologize. Thanks for, right now, I think you're my number one viewer. I think you are like, you're somebody that's seen my show and actually came back. You're like, all right, I can tolerate this jerk. So you don't ever have to apologize for not showing up. I don't kind of, like I said, everybody has busy schedules. I'm coming in at 11 a.m. Eastern time. A lot of folks are working. I'm assuming because you're hearing this, I haven't really checked to see if my audio is working, but I'm guessing my audio is working if you're hearing me. But yeah, no worries. Yesterday was a good show. It was a obviously the nice thing is that YouTube posts the show. It was only about 55 minutes or so. So it's probably my shortest show, but I think it was nice and tight, like it was a tight 55 minutes. I went as long as my caffeination allowed me to go. But and I'm gonna continue holding to that. Like, I don't know. This could end up being like a half-hour show. This could end up being a 20-minute show. I don't know. Like I said, I'm very much a seasonal kind of guy. Like right now, I have a lot of energy. I'm able to do the show daily, and I can do it for an hour plus. Oh, I'm awesome, Luke. Oh, you make it easy to stick around. Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't know. Like I said, I blather a lot, man. I'm somebody that like I go off on tangents. So people that maybe appreciate a structured show could probably get tired of me really quick, and I appreciate that. I'm okay. Like I said, I'm not obligating anybody to stick around. I mentioned that, and I don't know if you were here when I was talking earlier in the show. Like I stopped. I'm gonna stop if I can all help it. I'm gonna stop requesting comments. I just realized that people's YouTube viewing habits are kind of mirror their interaction habits, right? So like I'm somebody that will walk the neighborhood and I'll say hi and good morning to everybody. Um, Again, I'm a Brooklynite. That was something that I didn't grow up in Brooklyn doing, but it's something that I've evolved because like I'm a social person. That can vary as well. Like sometimes I feel a lot more social than others. When I have that energy, I will be the person that says good morning and I'll address you and sometimes I'll get a good morning back. Sometimes I'll get like a weird look. Like, why are you talking to me? Right? It's kind of like New York City subway culture, right? Anybody that rides the subway in New York City, you kind of know it's like you try not to make too much eye contact, because sometimes if you make eye contact, people get offended, like you're like, what, why are you looking at me? You know? And then you're like, I'm looking at you because, I think you're interesting to look at, and that's no offense, you kind of do that like, hey, what's going on? But I don't know where that came from. I think maybe that's where New York City, New York City folks, they get that perception of like the gritty city, the rough city. But New York is also very social. Like I said, I've gone back, I'm going back to New York this weekend. I'll go back and I will do the, hey, good morning or good afternoon, and people will engage. New Yorkers are very social. Maybe less so on the subway, because the subway, I think, does that weird thing to people when they get on public transport and all of a sudden they don't want to be talked, they don't want to engage. Maybe they're on their way to work or coming back from a long day on work. And like the last thing they want to do is talk to another human being, and they don't even want to be looked at, which is weird. Like it's one of those things like I talked about with like the Fedora, right? Like if you're in the wrong city if you don't want to be looked at, I don't know. I feel like that could go both ways, right? Because there's such high numbers in New York City, like maybe you could be a lot more anonymous. Morgan, this is a question that I'm gonna have for you. Like you're in New York City, like, and now you're kind of like you got the hat culture. Do you ever get any kind of weird interactions? I'm curious, and does it vary like depending on like where you're at? Like if you're in the subway or you're walking in your neighborhood, I wonder like how do people react to your hat? Do they want to talk about it? Do they make a comment? Hopefully, all good. I personally think it's a great look, and I just wonder. Like I know I get sometimes reactions, and it's all been pretty much positive. I get like two reactions usually like right, so they'll look at maybe my hat and my glasses, and then they'll like okay, they'll cue in on the hat. Sometimes they'll cue in on the pie, the pie symbol, and maybe they'll ask if they'll make a comment about it. It's like great medallion, or I like your medallion, or that's pie, or they'll think it's Hebrew. They'll think it's instead of pie, they'll think it's chai, which is very much looks like pie, but it's a Hebrew, kind of a Jewish thing. So I'll get that a lot. But yeah, for the most part, the comments are mostly either quizzical or very polite and like engaging, and they're like, oh, or they'll just talk about the fact that they see me walking every day. It's like, I see you walking here a lot. You like to walk, don't you? I'm like, well, I do now. Like I've gotten back to it. I gotta like try to keep my weight down. The weight keeps creeping back up on me. Um, yeah. So yeah, like that's something that I'm gonna be like when I ask and I engage with my viewers. If I get a sizable viewership here, I'm gonna be like when it comes down to me asking questions. I don't recall, this is Morgan. I don't recall any strange or weird conversations, but my memory is always poor. All right, LOL. That's cool. Like I said, that's fine. Like I said, I think sometimes we forget that we are wearing our hats, and people like it's weird to some people. Again, in New York City, you get a lot of still. I think you got a lot of. Again, I call New York City hat mecca. I still think it's hat mecca, even though like it's more like you see a lot more ball caps still, a lot of the trucker hats. But you probably have a better chance of seeing like a fedora or a Panama hat in New York City. In Miami, when I'm out in Miami, I'll see Panama hats all over the place. You won't see felt because nobody has a glutton for punishment like I am to be rocking a felt hat in freaking Miami, right? Like I do it. Like I'm out in like the Miami West Palm Beach area sometimes to visit family, and I'm wearing my hat and I'm like sweating it up, sweating to the oldies here and in Florida, but I'm still wearing my felt hat because again, like I mentioned in the previous stream, I only have one straw hat. But it's an important hat because it was probably my first hat. Um, and I got that on a trip on Croatia to Split, where I just had a thing where I'm like, okay, I felt like I needed to have a hat on. I didn't know anything about like felt hats. I didn't know anything about straw hats. All I knew is I wanted a hat, preferably blue, to kind of match my outfit that I was wearing on that trip. And so I got one, and I paid like I don't know 5, maybe €8 for that hat, and I wore it throughout the whole trip. Like my pictures they were all in there, and I was a wreck because I was just all over. We were in Spain, and then we went to Croatia, and then back to Spain. But I was wearing a hat, and it was like a Trilby style straw hat in blue color. I still have it. I'll show it on the stream one day. But I wore it Frank Sinatra style, and not with like when I say Frank Sinatra style, not with the hat tilt, right? Because that's another Frank Sinatra style. But the other style that Frank Sinatra was really well known for was I'm going to try to recreate it here. Is like this style, right? Now my hair is a wreck, and I apologize, but kind of like wearing the hat on the back of your head, right? Like trilbies, I think really look good in that style, right? Trilby is kind of like a form of a fedora style, but it has kind of like the point. It has like a definite like look, like fixed look of the trilby. Like you don't usually flip trilbies up because it usually is a very very short brim. I think that's part of the definition of a trilby. It has like a less than a 2-inch brim, and it's not meant to flip up. Although maybe you can still do that. But yeah, I wore it that style, and it felt like I was like, all right, I had my Frank Sinatra vibe going with that trilby shaped blue straw hat from Croatia. I've never gotten rid of that hat, even though it doesn't fit in my collection per se. But it means a lot to me, so I've kind of kept it throughout the years. Maybe one day I'll give it away. I don't know. I don't know what I'll do with that hat, but it definitely doesn't like it doesn't fit, right? It doesn't fit with my collection. It's outside of my theme, my felt hat theme. So maybe one day I'll rehome that, right? We talked about that the other day about rehoming hats, and I'll do that. But yeah, let's get back to the thing. I'm talk about tangents. But yeah, Morgan, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of just show you some photos of the hat here, like a still photo, because I've been able to successfully do that without breaking anything. So I'll continue to do this until it blows up in my face. So yeah, let me hand this a little bit more and see if I can kind of show you. That way, I always like this kind of side profile only because it shows the plainness of the hat. yesterday was really useful because yesterday, Morgan, you missed the show. Hopefully you will be able to catch it on the reruns, right, in syndication. So the reason why this profile for yesterday's Mallory Fifth Avenue really was good was because I had a hat pin. So the hat just happened to come, that Mallory that I showed yesterday happened to come in with what's called a parachutist badge or jump wings. So those folks that really know about the military, and I learned this all after I got the hat, that hat, besides looking really sharp in the way I love a hat to look and fit on me, it had this hat pin. And those folks that are really like kind of know that synonymous with this hat subculture is the idea of wearing a pin, some kind of meaningful or decorative pin in your hat. And this hat happened to be, my guess, not knowing, just knowing what I knew, probably belonged to a former member of the military, probably somebody that served in World War II and went to jump school. The only reason I say that is because I went through the history of that pin. That pin was developed by then Captain William P. Yarbrough in 1941. And it was commissioned by the Department of War later that year. I think it was November 1941. And it was kind of synonymous with World War II. And I think the pin, that jump wing, those jump wings are still used today, but somebody that knows better can kind of correct me. But that's why this profile is probably the most useful hat still profile. And I'll still I'll still try to keep providing that. But I want to kind of just move on a little bit here because I'm kind of getting a little verbose, even though that's pretty much what the whole point of this is. But I'll keep showing some more photos. Let's see here. Okay, this is one style of photo that I have on the Fedora Lounge that I used to always do. I got away from it only because I feel like I kept showing too many photos, probably, at least in my mind. I know that there's some folks that love this stuff because they geek out about it. I'm one of them. And there are other folks that like, I don't want to see the inside of your hat. Like, who cares? Like, that's ugly. But there's a reason for why a lot of folks like me will show this part of the hat, is because this is another clue as to, like, if you want to know about, like, if you collect vintage hats and you want to know a little bit something about around what date it was manufactured, this will tell you a lot. And it did tell me a lot about one, who made the hat, right? So we know that it's a Carson Pirie, I'm going to keep pronouncing it that, Carson Pirie Scott Co. hat. But we know they didn't make it, right? Carson Pirie Scott Co. was a department store in the greater Chicago area. They didn't make hats. They commissioned hats to be made with their logo. So for those folks that kind of watch this either live or watch this, after the fact, right here and then, this already tells me two major things about this hat. Let's start with number one. Who made this hat? And if you're watching a lot of my shows, you kind of know where I'm going with this. When I look at this label, and I will defer to people that are more expert, like the Hatted Professor, and anybody of my fellow Fedora loungers that are really geek out about dating hats. But if you know this label style, you know that this is a classic Hat Corporation of America label, right? Remember the conglomerate Hat Corporation of America, which included notable brands like Dobbs, Kavanaugh, Knox, Berg, and several others that I can't probably rattle off beyond. But yeah, Dunlap would be another one. Wow, Dunlap. I don't think I've mentioned Dunlap, but I will show a Dunlap hat here. I've already shown my Berg. I will show a Dunlap hat here. But this label shows that this hat was commissioned for the Carson Pirie Scott Co. department store, and it was manufactured by Hat Corporation. This is, I think, right around the 1940s or so. You'll know this if you're like a fan of the Hatted Professor I recommend that if you want to learn more about dating and learning about how to date your vintage hat. He will go in there. He has a section going into how to tell the age of your hat and who manufactured your hat by looking at the labels. Like, he really focuses on the Hat Corporation of America, because that was the biggest, that was the kind of the for lack of a better term, big hat, right? Just like we have big oil, big tech now, big hat in the US was Hat Corporation of America, and I believe it was John Kavanaugh that created that conglomerate. So he was the head of Big Hat in the heyday in the U.S. And besides Stetson, right, you had Big Hat in the form of Hat Corporation of America, and this hat definitely was a Hat Corporation of America hat. I can't drill down further than that, but the second detail is based on this label. So we know that it's a Hat Corporation of America because we know that post 40s, they standardize their labels. And again, you can't look at this without pulling down the hat liner and looking underneath your liner. Like, it's a hidden detail. But for those folks that don't know that this stuff exists with vintage hats, well, now you know. But in Fedora Lounge, you will see this all over the place, where folks who are that curious, like myself, to know how old their hat is, they will see here, right? So we already have another clue because we talked about crown heights, right? So this is a hat that definitely doesn't have I don't know, this is probably kind of like in that, I want to say 3.5 to 4 inch crown, or 4.5 inch crown height. I don't know, I didn't measure it, but that, speaking of crown heights, not Crown Heights of Brooklyn. That's a Brooklyn joke for Morgan and myself, who happen to come from Brooklyn. It's not, the Crown Heights means something different, in the hat world, that could, compared to the Brooklyn world. So crown height is something that you don't see on this label. You don't see a crown height here. You see, like, you have 4 pieces of information. It says oval, to duplicate, the block, and the size. And I think the size is 7 1/4. But that right there already tells us, if you go on hatitprofessor.com, you will see that this label is synonymous with a 1960s hat label. So now we know that this hat is a hat probably from the early 60s, I would say, only because of the plastic tip liner that I showed you on camera earlier. So this label is from the 1960s, from the Hat Corporation of America. So, wow, there you go. That is another piece of information that you can use to date your hats. Why isn't it from the 50s, you might ask? Well, because of what I just mentioned just a moment ago. You don't see here, usually in a 1950s Hat Corporation of America style hat, you would see the crown height listed here. It'll probably be somewhere, I don't know, I'm guessing it will be slotted somewhere between the block and the size. Somebody that knows better than I do can probably correct that if that's wrong. But sometime between the 50s and the 60s, Hat Corporation of America decided that posting the crown heights didn't really matter on the label. Again, we know that, like I mentioned before, hats, the crowns of hats started slowly getting smaller, right? So like those big crowns, like you see on Morgan's Nostalgia Premiere, and on like the yeah, Shane gangster, the old prototypical gangster hat of the 20s and 30s. Those were ginormous crowns. And it was really important for big, hat companies like Hat Corporation of America and to post the crown height in that label, because it was a really important feature. But what was happening is that style was evolving. Again, I'm going to keep mentioning this ad nauseum, probably to coincide with the advent and the proliferation of the automobile as an everyday thing that hat wearers had to get in and out of. So crown heights had to get smaller, right? So if you were going to get somebody a hat that wasn't going to bother them to get in and out of a car, that crown height had to get smaller, you know? And there probably was a whole other reason. Maybe besides the automobile, fashion there was another reason why crown height started getting smaller. I don't know the answer to that though. All I can think of is, you know, again, I talked about the fact that I studied organizational psychology. You know, that's my formal education. And I'm very much, if you kind of know anything about organizational psychology, is that our roots are in functional psychology, right? We talk about behavior primarily with respect to how functional it is. You know, behavior exists because it serves a certain function, and usually to serve some sort of master motive, right? So I've kind of given you some Psych 101 in terms of the 3 master motives, right? You know, need for achievement, need for affiliation, and need for power. And behavior, if you are very much a functionalist like I am, you kind of tend to think that human behavior exists to serve one or more of those 3 master motives, and that's why you have behavior that pervades, right? And anything that doesn't serve those master motives usually kind of doesn't get exhibited, you know, unless the situation calls upon it. Anyway, I'll stop with the Psych 101 because this is not this type of channel. But yeah, so what we learn just by looking at this label, and again, I'm sure that there's some hat nerds out there that probably didn't even know that this label existed. If it did, then I'm telling you something, I'm just repeating myself. That's fine. I'm kind of doing this for people that, for the hat nerds that maybe aren't into vintage hats, but maybe want to get into vintage hats. You know, this is part of the geeking out that we do, we vintage hat nerds kind of do when we get ourselves a new hat. Like, even though, like, it all kind of depends, right? Like if I get a sweatband that looks like it's gonna fall apart, if I try to pull it apart, then maybe I'll leave it alone. But I always have that curiosity and that itch, and I usually kind of like, if I see a brittle headband, I'll probably wait a couple days, and then the curiosity gets the best of me, and I'll go and I'll do that. And what I'll usually try to do is I'll take a photograph of it, right? I'll photograph it. Like, I did take this photograph recently. This is kind of photograph that I had already, because I posted it on the Fedora Lounge, because I want to know. Like, every time I get a hat, I kind of want to know any kind of clues as to the history of the hat and what era it came from. So yeah, I just kind of in real time kind of showed you what a vintage hat nerd kind of goes through when they acquire a new hat. And I'm forgetting a lot of details. There are other things that you can pay attention to, besides the style, besides the label. You can look at the crest, or the roundel. I forget what those are referring to, but they kind of deal with the label, the hat lining itself, right? Because we know that certain manufacturers evolve their logos over time, right? So let's say the Dobbs logo wasn't the same logo that used throughout time, right? They evolved that logo. Usually what happens is you'll have a situation like, let's say, like Stetson, right? Stetson changed their logo and it was a very nuanced logo. I think it was after the 1940s, I want to say, where you look at their logo and they had like a shield. And at some point they shifted from having a shield that had a bunch of stars, which I'm assuming meant that represented the stars on the American flag, and they shifted to having a maple leaf. And I can only assume that meant that their manufacturing maybe shifted from the United States, to maybe Canada, and that's why you went from a shield that had stars to a shield that contained a maple leaf. Without knowing that, I guess the only thing I could kind of the only justification I can kind of make up, or story I can make up that fits why they shifted. But for us nerds that collect Stetson hats, vintage ones, again, I only have, I think, a couple Stetson hats. One's like modern, the other one's really vintage. I think I only have those two. But the bowler that I have is a vintage hat, and it had the stars. And actually that's my oldest hat, I think. I'll show that pretty soon. maybe even tomorrow. Maybe I'll show that tomorrow. There's a couple hats that I'm itching to show. That Stetson bowler from the 1930s is definitely one of them. But I also have another cool hat that's definitely completely different than any hat I own. It probably is like the wildest hat I own. If you kind of know me from the Facebook groups, then you kind of know what hat I'm talking about. It's a modern hat. It's a custom hat, but not custom made for me. But it is very much a custom hat, and it's wild. It's wild. I don't wear it nearly enough because it's that wild. But I love it, right? It kind of very much is like, well, I got the hat from Kevin Gerber, right? And that's another common theme. I got the hat from Kevin Gerber, and and even though it's not one of his KTG hats, it's very much a hat kind of that's in the spirit of his hats in terms of color, because it's really loud and out there. And I'm not kind of a loud and out there kind of style. Like these brown, black, gray hats are typically the hats that you see me in, but I do have some kind of louder hats. I definitely have I believe it's a Champ or Adam hats that there's kind of a nice bolder green with a nice wide feather. I'm gonna show that one. Champ. Wow, I got a decent number of Champ hats, and that's another, like we talked about, like um the pork pie hat being kind of like the redheaded stepchild in the fine hat community. Sometimes even like the Panama hat is in that camp. I feel like Champ as a brand, even though I haven't showed one yet, because Champ was a hat that is was very much like the everyday man hat wear hat. And I think Adam's hats was also I think it's Adam hats, not Adam's hats. It's a very common thing, and I even do it in, only because I guess maybe the Adams family. But it's Adam hats. Adam hats and Champ hats are very much kind of like people don't really like that. What's the big deal? It's just an Adam hat, or it's just a Champ hat, But those hats kind of like a lot of those hats, the cheaper ones, kind of came out in the like 60s, late 60s, early 70s, when the hat industry was on the way out, and they were really built to a price point. So I don't think those are any less. I mean, they're great knockaround hats, if anything. And I wonder if we have any collectors that really stick to like Adam hats or Champ hats because of that, right? So like one man's trash is another man's treasure. I kind of say, and I tend to think that somebody who like poo poos Champ or Adam or any other brand like that's kind of like the lower quality hat, whatever. Again, I'm not one of these elitist hat collectors. I have hats that come from various quality levels. They just speak to me. If you are, I'm not like, I don't know. As long as you can be an elitist hat collector, as long as you don't like try to like put somebody else down. That's kind of where I kind of like fit, right? If you go and you love hats that are like super vintage and they're like certain style and like you think they're the best hat in the world, that's great. You should love your hats. But you shouldn't put somebody else down because they don't have that same hat, or they love another style of hat, just as much and maybe even more so than you love your prized possession. Like I said, everybody has varying budgets. Everybody has varying tastes. Again, I'm not a straw hat kind of guy, but doesn't mean that I don't look at a Panama hat and can't see beauty, and I can't see the allure as to why people. Some people probably only collect Panama hats. I've seen some really beautiful, really expensive Panama hats out there that, man, they look beautiful. I see why that people collect them and love them so much. Besides the functional use, right? I think I don't really become really jealous of Panama hats until I go to like when I go to some place like Florida or someplace else tropical, and then I start sweating like I'm not gonna make the analogy because I'll try to keep this clean, but I start sweating like a what, and in church. Yeah, just to kind of just add to, like, again, getting back because I went on a tangent there. Back to the label. If you are watching this and you're not into vintage hats, but you maybe want to get into it, there's nothing to say like modern hat. Like I think somebody could just be a modern hat collector and be very satisfied, right? Because we got Stetson still alive and well. We got the KTG hats that are made by McGill that's out there. We got a lot of like Franchi hats, who I'm a member of the great. Shout out to Franchi. I believe his name is Angel Cruz, another hat maker. We got Huff Bud making really great old, like the high crown hats that everybody loves. And some of those custom hats are a little bit pricier, right? Because materials inflation has, eaten all of our dinners, right? Everybody that's been living and shopping for a dozen of eggs in the supermarket will tell you about inflation. I remember when I could get a dozen eggs for 99 cents, and that wasn't that long ago. Now you're paying like $4 or $5 for a dozen eggs. And now you really, like, if you weren't checking your eggs to see if you got a cracked one before, like I still do and I did before, you're really checking them now. Like, holy cow, I'm not paying $1 for this dozen. I'm paying like $4 or $5 or more. Like I'm just thinking Aldi prices. Aldi tends to be a lot more reasonable. But I get my generally shop at Aldi, and even though inflation has still hit Aldi, you can still at least get reasonable. Like if you spend $100 at Aldi, you could probably still come away with a decent haul. If you spend $100 at Whole Foods, I think you're coming out with a bag of like mixed nuts maybe, or some coffee, right? Shout out to Whole Foods. I don't know nothing against Whole Foods. We tend to refer to it as whole paycheck. Um, here at the house because it's like the other thing is like star for or star $5, right? Because you can't get a coffee at Starbucks without paying $5 or $6 these days, right? Especially I know here in the DC metro area is like that. Morgan, you're in New York City, and I know it's that way because I'm from New York City and I go back. Man, what's going on? Anyway, vintage hats. If this could help somebody get into vintage hats, I love it. You know what I mean? Like, I think we need more vintage hat nerds. I think we just need hat nerds in general, right? We're a small community. We should be celebrating each other's collections and not like being divisive. I'm a member of a Facebook group that only deals with pre-1960s hats. That's cool. There's a functional reason for that, but I just want to make sure, and I haven't gotten that vibe yet. I think I posted some post 1960s hats in there by mistake. I try to be better about that. When I post in a forum by mistake, or without asking permission, I don't do it. I just want to put this out there, because if you run one of these forums, one of these Facebook groups, and I post something, please know that there was no ill intent meant, right? Like if I posted a 1960s or 1970s hat in your pre-1960s forum, just give me and my fellow folks that make mistakes a little bit of grace. Don't ban me if at all possible, or at least message me before you ban me, or threaten to ban me. I feel like that's something that we should do for kind of our fellow hat nerds, our fellow budding hat nerds, is to kind of pay it forward that way. Like everybody started off somewhere in this hobby, and we need more ambassadors, right? I don't know. Again, this is a tiny YouTube channel. I'm just a collector, just somebody that's a talking head here. But if I can be a good ambassador, and I feel like I always carry myself like I am an ambassador for the hat community, because we're that small of a community. Like I said, we don't have a formal leader. We don't have formal leadership other than maybe like icons like Meyer the Hatter, who have been doing this and they're 101 years old. I'm like, that kind of guy is a leader in this community, whether he knows it or wants to think of himself as that or not. But we got folks in here that have been doing this forever, and they might be like second, third, or fourth generation hat wearer or hat maker. And those are definitely ambassadors for whether they like it or not. But Morgan, I don't know if you're still with me, but you're definitely a hat ambassador, just by function of the fact that you're in New York City. You're wearing the high crown hats, by KTG. And, I think human beings, not to get too preachy, but we carry ourselves, we rise to the level of expectations, right? If somebody expects you to carry yourself with dignity and respect, I think you tend to rise to that expect. I think, again, going off on another organizational psychology tangent, if anybody there's a manager, I know I'm no longer a manager, but I used to be. I used to manage people. I always ascribe to the notion that your direct reports will rise to the level of expectation that you set for them. And I haven't always I've always haven't always taken that to heart. I definitely had some interactions when I was a manager that I had some courageous conversations. Let's just put it that way. And maybe I come away with those conversations like, man, I could have handled that a little bit better, a little bit nicer, a little bit more grace. But that's the nice thing about about life and about living, is that we can never live and learn. And sometimes we don't always handle things with the level of grace and patience that we would like to. But it doesn't mean that we can't do it tomorrow, right? We can always do better today. Can always be better today than we were yesterday, right? So just like our collections can be better, we can be better than we were yesterday. And I think if we go outside, we carry ourselves in our home, right? Because right, charity begins at home. If we carry ourselves at home that way, and then that carries over into how we treat our general public, I think this world will be a lot nicer and a lot better. There'll be probably a lot more hat nerds, because everybody's like, hey, I want to be one of those nice hat people. They're much better than those nasty whatever people. I don't know, but a nasty. I feel like watch people can also be kind of have a reputation of being like, actually, that's a crap watch, and let me show you a real watch, right? Like, that's because the watch community is, I think, a lot larger than the general hat community, and you definitely got a lot of there's a lot of people that drop some serious coin, right? So you might get like $1,000 hat, a $1,500 hat. Some people are dropping like $100,000, and again, not to conflate price with pompous attitudes, but I tend to kind of see that a lot more with like some of the show pieces, right? So somebody will go down there like, hey, I paid like what you would pay for, my watch costs more than your house, so I'm better than you. I'm like, hey man, if that's what you want to go, if that's how you want to live, that's cool. Like, you're not better. I don't think you're better than me because you have a $3,000 hat and a $500,000 watch and a $3 million car. You might be a great person. Again, I know you don't. Money does not make you, or your possessions do not make you a jerk. Jerk behavior and jerk attitudes make you a jerk, right? So I'm a big believer that money is a magnifier, right? Money makes you more of what you already are, right? So if you are a mean jerk, and if you have a lot of money, well, then you're a rich, mean jerk. But if you're a nice person, and a gentle person, and a giving person, and you have a lot of money, well, then you're super nice. You might be even a philanthropist. You might be somebody that gives to charity and has foundations. You know what I mean? Like, your possessions, like, you are not your hat collection, you are not your watch collection, you are not your car collection, you are not your possessions. Like, that's kind of like the minimalist. If anybody's heard of the minimalist, right? Like, I fashion myself a minimalist, but the minimalists are actually a duo, and I think they're still alive and kicking. Not that they should be dead; they're very young, but I think they're still doing their thing. As like, they have their own podcast. I believe they have their own YouTube channel, and they have documentaries, right? And they were one of the things like, what is their sound? I'm gonna try to say it. I'm gonna butcher this. It's kind of like collect experiences, own things, right? Like, just to kind of delineate, right? Like, you are not the sum total of your collection, right? So if Luke has N+1 but less than 100 hats, Luke is no better than you if you only have one hat, right? On the quite contrary, you might be I might think that you're better than me because you only have one hat that you really love, right? There's like a famous Bruce Lee quote, right? It's like, and I'll butcher this again, but I'm full of these quotes and I butcher them all. But Bruce Lee once famously said, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once. I truly fear the man that has practiced one kick 10,000 times, right? That's powerful, right? That's really powerful, because that goes to show you, like, if you have one hat, if you have like there's such a thing as a one watch collection. I'm sure there's a thing as a one hat collection. There are people out there that have only owned one hat. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they don't most adult life. I gotta respect that, man. I respect that just as much as people that have every wall in their hat filled with hats that never wears them. Maybe even more, right? Because I just happen to be somebody that really loves to wear their hats, and I love to see hats out in the wild, right? So, no offense to those folks that just collect hats and they never wear them because they're showpieces. They're not meant to be worn. You can see there my hat lining there. I can see a stain right there. Like a lot of my hats, most of my hats have stains because either I bought them that way or I put them there, and I don't care which one. If they didn't have a stain when I bought it, they probably will once after I bought it, right? So if you ever like have to acquire a hat that you got from good old Luke, it's gonna be worn, And if it didn't get worn a lot, then well, I just didn't get around to wearing it a lot, But I very much wear my hats, and I kind of really dig folks that wear their hats. Again, it's just one of those things where I'm one of those collectors and I'm one of those hat consumers, and you kind of like we kind of like to find our tribe, right? Anyway, of course I went on a tangent, but I got a couple more photos here before I close the show. Yeah, just to kind of show you the hat lining. Remember, we talked about the plastic tip liner. So I just wanted to show a photo here. This is not the best picture, obviously, because the hat is bashed and like it kind of deformed a little the logo here. But you can see it says the men's store, Carson Pirie Scott Co. And again, for those folks that are from Chicago or have been to Chicago, this was like a major department store in the greater Chicago area. They had multiple locations, and they were one of the major department store players. And again, my assumption is that they cut a deal with, as probably a lot of major department stores did with Hat Corporation of America, and said, listen, we like your hats, but we want to just sell our hats with our own brand. Can you just give us some of your better selling hat styles that we choose from a catalog and slap our label on it? And then we'll sell our Carson Pirie and Scott and Co hats. And everybody's happy, right? You get to sell a hat, we get to sell a hat that has our label, and everybody wins. So yeah, that's just another still shot. I'll show you there. That shows you kind of like the headband, the sweatband label there. You can see Carson. Again, I'm going to say this, but somebody can correct me. Carson Pirie Scott and Co, the men's store, department store, which was again in the greater Chicago area. And yeah, just to close out the pictures, my last photo is a downtown. This is State Street in Chicago. I don't know if I've been to Chicago a couple times, but I don't recall like this area. But I think this is State Street. You can see the cabbie there, and you can see. I'm gonna try to zoom in this and show you. But you can see right here in the top photo that this was probably their, I want to say this might have been their flagship store. But you can see here, it's a very busy downtown area. And on the corner here, a very nice looking building. You can see the sign. It starts with Carson. I'm sure this is Pirie. And they had Scott and probably Scott and Co on the flip side. Very beautiful looking building. This very much reminds me of like the downtown areas you'll see in New York. It definitely reminds me of downtown Newark in its heyday. Um, yeah, just to kind of give you an appreciation of like what was the history of the hat, right? So again, if you missed this up to this point, I was showing you my brown fedora here from Carson Pirie Scott Co. And we actually examined some photos of the inside label and kind of determined that this was a Hat Corporation of America hat, branded by Carson Pirie Scott Co. And manufactured specifically for their stores. They're located in the Chicago area, and I'd love to kind of interact. So if somebody finds this video after the live stream is over, and maybe recalls maybe from their youth, this department store, and it can tell us a little bit more about when they went away. Right. What was the heyday of this store? Maybe the origins. Maybe this specific location and visited this location, and I wonder what's there now. That's my next thing, is like, what exists there now, because that's a pretty prime location. That looks like prime downtown Chicago right there. And it just I don't know, I dig this kind of stuff. Anyway, I think that's enough for the photos. Let me go, and without hopefully breaking anything, let me stop sharing this. There we go. There's my ugly mug back on screen. I've managed to do a couple streams without breaking anything, and that's good enough for me. Again, if you join me, if this is the first time you've seen any of my streams, you know that I am no tech nerd. I may be kind of a hat nerd, or maybe still a budding hat nerd, but even less so is my tech nerdery. My tech nerd ninja skills are a little bit limited. I'm kind of maybe a junior tech nerd, right? Like, I appreciate it. I want to get better at it. I think this is going to evolve over time. So maybe this is good. Morgan, you're going to have to be like the guinea pig for my viewership, because you are like my most right now. I think you're my top viewer, and you would just have to tell me, like, when my sound is not right, and whatnot. Actually, you know what, Morgan, I'm going to make you a moderator. Hopefully, let's see if I'm able to. As a moderator, let's see if this works. Can view and remove chat, hide the post, can manage, change modes. Okay, I'm gonna make you a standard moderator. Morgan, you have been promoted to moderator of Good Loops. Congratulations. It is not a very hectic job. You don't really have to show up. But yeah, you are now a moderator on Good Loops. If you're uncomfortable being a moderator, even though there's no real responsibility, like, if I can't, if we eventually grow this channel and we get any jerks in here and I can't get rid of them, I think this will allow you to get rid of them, Morgan. I think. I don't know, because I don't know enough about YouTube and to know what's the power of a moderator. But just rest assured, you're not obligated to show up here and moderate. But you have shown up, so now you're a moderator. Like, this is like one of the, this is going to be one of the perks, I guess, of viewership. If you show up consistently and you engage, unless I can't make everybody. I can't make everybody a moderator. One, because I don't know what the limitations. Like, YouTube might only allow me to make only so many people a moderator. And plus, I don't want to like dilute the specialness, the speciality. I don't want to reduce or dilute the specialness of making somebody a moderator, because, again, if there were ranks, right? You got like senior moderator. I don't think there's such a thing, and I don't care to go into all that. So yeah. So we talked about the hat of the day. I kind of made it through. I think I still made it on just one fizzy drink. So I didn't even have to take a break. We're about almost an hour and 15 minutes into this. I think Morgan's been with us most of the time. Somebody's been with us. Morgan was here. I think I had two, maybe three, even three people in here. But yeah, another show. I showed my brown fedora here. Again, by all means, this is one of those hats that, like I mentioned earlier, this is one of those hats that kind of I didn't know how special to me it was. It probably is like not one of those, like it's not anything wowing, but in owning this hat and like knowing some of the history, I've grown to have this as one of my mainstays. Like it's probably besides my Dobbs pork pie that I showed the other day, that's also brown. This is probably my one of my go-to brown hats that I go to. I think that Dobbs and this, and I could be wrong. I might have something else that I'll backtrack on that later. But right now, in terms of my Luke's knockaround hats, like the hats that he reaches for right away when he wants to like wear a brown hat, are that Dobbs pork pie that's brown, as well as this brown Carson Pirie Scott Co. Fedora, brown fedora that was made for the department store by the Hat Corporation of America. Big Hat made this. Again, I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but it means something to me. Because I'm not from that era, and I'm kind of a little bit of a hat nerd, and hopefully you are too, or at least can respect me being a hat nerd. Anyhow, we're about an hour and 16 minutes in. I think this is a good way to close the show. So hopefully you enjoyed this 11th segment, right? The 11th segment in the Hat Chat series. We're rapidly approaching the Dirty Dozen. Luke, you have a voice that can be used to sleep. Wow, Morgan, you're gonna make me cry here. Aw. I don't know if I have one of those booming voices, right? If you watched my well, if you watched any of my hat series, right, you kind of know, like, I go zero to New York very quickly, right? I call it zero to New York. When I was working in an office, one of the things that Luke, and I'm going to talk in the third person, one of the things that Luke always counted on is, in the course of the day, at some point, Luke's going to get excited. Maybe it has to do with my caffeination levels. So it's usually sometime in the morning where somebody will interact with me, and then they'll like stop and pause, and then they'll do this, right? They'll probably tell me it's like one of my favorite sayings: "Keep it down to a dull roar." Right? I fell asleep listening to you talk. My apologies. I didn't get much sleep. Hey, no worries, Morgan. You got to get that sleep. Hopefully all is well. You're living in the big city. It's kind of noisy, right? Well, if you watch Kevin's YouTube channel, you could always hear the police, right? Like, I think Kevin moved to a higher floor, and if you kind of been rocking with Kevin's YouTube channel, you can see that he had moved at a certain point. He had to move his hat collection, his guitar collection, and I think he moved up moving to a higher floor. So he was kind of like, maybe this will reduce the noise, and I think it might have done that, but you can still hear those police sirens if you lived in New York. Or go to and travel to New York City, that police sirens. You won't even see here, like in the greater DC metro area. I don't live in DC proper, but I live kind of like in the suburbs. But you'll still hear, the police department and the fire department. In New York, it's pervasive. So I don't know, Morgan, if you're a light sleeper or not. I tend to be a heavy sleeper. Like, I'm kind of like well known for my ability to sleep. It's like a gift and a curse, right? Like, I drop like a log. Sometimes I don't fall asleep right away, so sometimes I'll stay up really late. Maybe like dig up some Fedora Lounge content. Maybe plan for my next video. But when I do get that sleep bug, like, you can't wake me up. I'm a heavy sleeper as well. Sirens and even construction work don't bother me. Yeah, it's a gift and a curse, right? Like, it's one of those things where it's kind of like, in the house here, we joke about. So we have a cat, Oliver the cat, who is like I don't like, he doesn't show up on camera because like right now he doesn't jump. He's not one of those cats that jumps up on my desk. And he's also not a lap cat, right? So he's very much a radius cat, right? So if anybody knows anything, I'm kind of not like really like, I didn't grow up with like a lot of like cats per se. We did have cats every once in a while. Like if you grew up in Brooklyn like I did, usually the way you got a cat was some kind of stray cat showed up and you started feeding it and it learned that you were a food source and it just showed up and maybe you like let it in the house. And now that became your cat only because the cat said, hey, some good eating around here and stayed, right? But Oliver is actually a former feral cat. And he's been rehomed, right? So now he's domesticated. He has the hallmarks of a feral cat. So like if with feral cats, a lot of the animal associations will go through. They will maybe fix the cat so they don't procreate, and then they will clip the ear so that they will know in the future that the cat's been fixed. So Oliver has a clipped ear because he was a former feral. And sometimes he's like a little rascal. He likes to kind of go outside. So he waits for the door to open and he runs outside. But then he gets like really sad that he's outside because he realizes that he's not in his home. Cats just are very weird about being on the wrong side of the door, right? Anybody that has owned a cat knows that if you have a closed door, the cat will scratch at the door because it's like, I'm on the wrong side. It's like Oliver, just like a lot of cats, does not like closed doors. He does not like to be withheld because cats, they own the place, right? And according to if you have a cat, they own your place. They don't think of it as your place. They think of it as their place, right? So like, just like the chair is their chair. They may allow you to use it, but if you own a cat, like they think it's their chair. And sometimes they will claim the chair. Like my cat Oliver will jump on a chair. And if you go on his chair, like he has a favorite chair, if you go on his chair, he will sit there and look at you and just like, he either look at you or kind of just like do this. Like, I'm just going to wait for you to get up. And as soon as you get up, Oliver will jump on his chair and kind of reclaim his chair. And he'll like obviously bump it to make sure that you know that it's his chair. It's just the little things that you kind of like learn about cats along the way, and they're fascinating creatures, and they're very much lovable. I always been kind of more of a dog person growing up, but Oliver is one of those cats that makes you want to feed him and makes you want to love him, because he just has a little personality. He's not a jerk. A lot of cats can be jerks. He's not really one of those jerk cats. He's kind of like one of those cats that's always hungry, kind of like me, and just wants, like, you just want to feed this cat. And he's probably a little heftier, just like myself, than he should be based on like that, right? He knows how to ply his trade, right? He's like, he always has like, I could eat. Like, you got food? I love it. Whatever you got, I grew up on that. It's like, what's that? What's that, pasta? I love pasta. Give it to me. And then you obviously won't feed him the pasta, but you may, like, he apparently loves hamburger. So I, like, at some point I got into like keto and started eating like more of a carnivore keto diet, and I would cook hamburger, and I learned quickly that Oliver loves hamburger, and he loves, like, I don't know, I cook it in like olive oil, and I don't know, like, I try not to give him too much. Because I don't want to find out later that like cats can't eat. I think they can eat hamburger. I just don't know how I don't know how. If you're a cat person and am I doing harm to Oliver by giving him some burger that was cooked in olive oil? Hopefully not. I know olive oil is really healthy for human beings to consume. I know that there are a lot of things that cats and dogs can't consume that human beings love. I think chocolate and bananas are one thing for dogs. I think I learned along the way that don't give your dog chocolate, don't give your dog bananas. Even if they love it, don't do it because it's not good for them. And there's certain things like cats that they can't do. But yeah, Oliver's loving his new surroundings, his new palace, so to speak. He's kind of like shares my morning routine with me. Like he will go and try to wake me up in the morning and get me out of bed and beg for food, right? Because I am the guy. I think in terms of like the pack that that we have here, he outranks me. So I'm his food source. I'm the guy like, hey, he orders me around with his meowing, and he used to actually never meow. He now meows because I ruined him. Oh well. It's a good relationship. He's the cat version of me, and he's very much loved. You'll hear him from time to time. He's been quiet on this stream, but you've probably heard him on other streams, and you probably will. Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. Thanks, Morgan. Thank you. I've tried, like I said, Oliver is kind of like my son. We have no kids in the house, and that's pretty much he's my boy. It's like he's Oliver, my boy. I think Oliver actually has a YouTube channel. By the way, it's not something that I really like have advertised, but he does have a YouTube channel. Like it was one of at some point maybe we'll add to that. Yeah, no worries. Thank you for the moderator status, by the way, Luke. I feel honored that you are trust me with that. Morgan, of course, no problem. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a better night's sleep tonight. I will be in New York this weekend, so there probably won't be. So just FYI, before I get out of here today, there probably won't be a hat chat this weekend. There might not. So I'll do one tomorrow. But Saturday, I'm traveling back to New York, to New Jersey, New York area. So there won't be a hat chat on Saturday, Sunday, and maybe even Monday. I haven't decided yet whether I'm staying in New York till Monday, but I might. And if I do, I probably won't do that, only because I could technically stream on my phone, but that'll be a crappy quality. I'll be under I'll have family around. I really don't want to mix I don't know if this is not a business. This is just like a hobby. But the idea of mixing business with pleasure, I don't want to do that. When I go out to the New York, New Jersey area, I very much I try to put my kind of stuff aside and just enjoy being around family. That's one thing that if you want to know about Luke, I live about 5 hours away from most of my family in New York and New Jersey, and but I still am very much a family man, a family person, and I don't get out there that often, at least not often enough to go see my parents, especially, and other family that are a lot older, because again, I know that there might be one day that I no longer have them with me, and I want to enjoy them while I still can. I posted a photo. If you are a subscriber on this YouTube channel, you've seen that I've already posted 2 photos. All right. And the first photo was one of my grandfather, my dad's dad, who I never got to meet. He passed on, unfortunately, before I got to meet him. But I learned so much about him from family members that didn't know him. So besides my dad, uncles, cousins, just family members that didn't know, that are old enough to have known my granddad, my dad's dad. And by very means, there were 2 things that they've talked about. Well, 3 things, right? 3 things about my granddad that I'm going to share here that I've learned that, well, I don't know, it's just the truth, right? One is that he was not a guy to trifle with, right? I don't know if people would talk about my granddad as as the good guy. I mean, he wasn't a bad guy, but he was somebody that was a farming man in Puerto Rico. And if you know anything about farmers, especially farmers that are of Latin descent, they're just not folks that smile a lot. They're hard workers, that because of the fact that they're farmers, you don't usually get a lot of smiles out. You see me smiling all the time. I'm not a farmer. It's hard work. And if you're a farmer out there and you manage to smile, good on you, because that's difficult to maintain a smile. But that stereotype of the probably of the farmer that gives, if you go out to the city in the suburbs, you see a lot of smiles, but you go out into the country where they're actually farmers and we have them here in the DC metro area. We do have like some farming communities, folks that like real farms, and like just not what's like what's the smile about? Like maybe you have a great crop, or you may have a great like season, and there's smiles, but you're doing toiling work, so you don't smile, and maybe you're a little bit like a little edgy, right? So when somebody tries to go and is nasty to you, like if you're a farmer and you go to the local store, um, and try to get your stuff, and somebody gives you like somebody tries to sass you, you know that kind of stuff. You know, it's kind of hard to smile about it. So farmers like that manage to maintain a smile. My granddad was not one of them. I think the photo that he gets is about like I think he did one of those. I don't know. That's about like the smile, about the extent of the smile that you're gonna get from my granddad. But the other, so I mentioned that he was kind of like a, he had a lot of children. My dad was like one of like I think 10. Uh, uh, um, so he had my granddad had a lot of children, and he was not somebody that the children messed with. Like you didn't mess around with my dad's dad. Like the kids were in line. So yeah, my granddad was one of those guys that was a farmer that wasn't somebody to mess with. He was a hat guy, right? Like he wouldn't be seen anywhere without his hat. And I don't know how many hats he owned, but the photo that I posted is the only photo I have of him. It's a digital photo, meaning like I took a picture of a picture. So it's actually a photo that belongs to one of my cousins that he has hanging. I believe it's sitting on his dining room table. So I'm jealous of that. But he was nice enough to send it to his sister. His sister sent it to me. So my thank you to my cousins for sending me that photo. It's very cherished. I shared it first. And the third detail, this is something that I don't know. He was a very tall man. I am not a tall man, and neither is my dad. I think I'm actually taller than my dad. I think my dad's about 5'8". I'm about 5'10". But my granddad apparently like was about 6'6" or something like that, or 6'7". Ridiculous height. And I have brothers that had the height gene. So I had a couple of brothers that are about 6'5". So there is a height gene in my family. I don't have it. I'm kind of just average size, and I'm cool with that. I think you get to a certain height in this world, and you start finding out that the world's not built for you. If you don't know that, then you can talk to anybody that's like 6'6" or taller, and they'll tell you that this world is not made for people that are 6'6" and taller. And if you're 7 feet tall, then and hopefully you play. You're able to get some basketball money because that this world is not made for you. Cars are not made for you. Clothes are not made for you. Everything is not made for you. Maybe hats are the only thing that you could probably enjoy when you're really tall and nothing else fits you. At least maybe your head size is of decent. You don't have hopefully ginormous noggin, and you can enjoy the hats. But yeah, three tidbits about Luke's granddad that he never got to meet. He only has a photo of. Is that he was he didn't suffer any fools. He was a hat guy, and he was actually pretty darn tall. Yeah, I'm sure there are other details that I could probably recall that my dad might have shared with me. But I'm gonna go see my dad this weekend, so that's why there'll be no hat chat. But I'm gonna enjoy that time with my dad and my mom and the rest of my family, and there will be no hat chat. But as soon as I get back, there will be one. Maybe I'll be back Monday. Maybe I'll be back Tuesday. I don't know. I'll just play it by ear. Yeah. Thank you, Morgan. I will. I always have a great time with visiting family. Like I said, sometimes I get a chance to like buy a hat. Sometimes I'll meet up with Kevin over in Queens, and I'll buy I'll buy a hat from him. It's just tight because it just doesn't always work out that way. Like I want to go to Bencraft one of these days. I don't know if I'll do it this time on this trip, and I want to go meet Steve Goldstein. Right? I think that's right. Over at Bencraft in Brooklyn, because I want to make sure I'm able to have that experience before before there is no Bencraft. You know what I mean? Like at some point that's possible. It's happened. Morgan, let me know. Morgan says, let me know if you go to Bencraft. Maybe I'll meet you. All right, that sounds good. I will let you know. I might not happen on this trip, but if I do, I'll drop you a line, Morgan. I'll drop. Maybe I'll message you. Yeah, I'll friend you on Facebook. All right, cool. That sounds good. Friend me on Facebook, and then that way I'll send you a messenger chat. And if I can get over to Bencraft, if I stay longer, maybe I can do it on Monday. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. Like I said, usually when I go to New York, it's like a very tight schedule. Like usually I'll start off in New Jersey and kind of work my way east, northeast, or mostly just east. I know Saturday and Sunday is pretty much allocated. If I end up staying till Monday, maybe I'll get enough time to kind of do something like a trip to Bencraft. Morgan, if I get to meet you, maybe we could do a selfie together. And hopefully, well, not hopefully, but if we do a selfie, Morgan, use your camera. My camera sucks. I have a pretty crappy phone camera. So hopefully you have, you can't have probably a crappy phone camera than I do. And I've seen some of your photos, Morgan. I think you have a fine camera. I think you're using your phone. It's probably like an iPhone. I have a Samsung that's like the base model. It's like, it's not the base model, but it's kind of like the model that's like, you don't really like take pictures, do you? Only because it was like, hey, this is the kind of phone I'm comfortable with, and it's ginormous in my hand, but it doesn't take great photos, and at least not like a Google Pixel camera, phone camera, or a iPhone. And most people, I think these days, especially in New York, it just seems like everybody's got an iPhone. So you probably, Morgan, I have no idea what kind of phone you have. It's probably better than mine. So what I'll do is I'll tell you to take the photo. And yeah, I look forward to meeting you, Morgan. I know eventually I'll meet with you, and maybe one day we'll do like a KTG Hats reunion. I know Kevin's talked about it, to do like a kind of get together. If I'm able to join, again, I'm about 5 hours away from New York City, but I do get out there often. If it works out and I'm able to like join some of the folks that get to see Kevin on the regular, then I love that. I know, was it Tim Fries, Jose? There's a bunch of folks that Kevin knows. Besides, I think he worked with some of these folks as well when he was working in the hat shop. But yeah, I don't know if that fits into your schedule. Sunday is a perfect day to see him. Yeah, I know. It's just Sunday right now. It's like packed. Like I'm gonna start like Sunday. I'm gonna be at a barbecue, a family barbecue on Saturday, and I'm staying overnight there in Jersey. And in Jersey in the morning, I got a breakfast appointment with another family member. So apparently, I'm gonna be eating a bunch of pancakes on Sunday morning. Then I'll go over and visit a dear friend of the family who's in a nursing home. But he's about 96, 97 years old. And we always make it a point to visit him, because when you're 97, like we gotta take advantage of seeing you every single time. And he's got a little bit of dementia, and but he's still sharp. Used to sell insurance, and I think he likes to see my hats. So I'm gonna visit him probably right after we have breakfast in the morning, and then right after that, my mom already has us allocated to cook us, have food ready around midday, and I probably end up spending the whole of Sunday with my parents, only because again they're also up their age. My dad's around 86, I think, and my mom's 80. So I'd like to think that they're gonna live forever. Nothing lasts forever, right? Like November Rain, some Guns N' Roses. But I hope they seem to be in good health right now. And I'm gonna enjoy them while I still can. But yeah, Kevin, if you ever watch this, hopefully I'll get you on here one day, and we can get you on here as a guest. Morgan, obviously, you're always welcome to come on as a guest. Again, no obligation, just because you're a moderator now. My very first moderator. You don't ever have to come on here and guest. Hopefully, we'll have Kevin on here. We'll get Johnny. We talked about Johnny. If you I think that's his YouTube channel. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. Johnny is a new YouTuber, has a fine collection of hats. I think he has 2 videos up. Check him out. I look him up, Johnny or Johnny Hats. But I'll try to get Johnny on here as a guest, and that way we can have somebody, like, we can actually have a dialogue with somebody, that's not just messages, and then hopefully the audience that watches this is able to appreciate the videos that much more. Maybe that'll be better. Maybe that'll be what we need. So yeah, so lots of good things happening. Definitely that as far as I know, all things considered, there will be one final hat chat tomorrow, number 12. I'll try to do hat chat number 12, the Dirty Dozen, tomorrow, before I clock off, and I'll sign off for a few days, and I'll resume right back. So lucky number 13 will probably happen after I get back from New York, New Jersey, and hopefully I'll be refreshed and ready to, like, breathe new life into this still very new hat channel. So I'm gonna we're at 1 hour and 40 minutes. I thought I was gonna end this a long time ago, but I got some good conversation going. But I will end this now. So until next time, this is your boy Luke, sharing hat chat number 12. And until the next time, Morgan, yes, have a great day. You as well. And for Morgan and anybody else that has been viewing this or will view this, until the next 12 hat chat, stay hatting. Ciao.